There is no redemption in the Eye of Terror. No forgiveness. No second chances. Only the slow, agonizing transformation of the soul into something unrecognizable, something that writhes and howls in the dark spaces between stars. You were once a warrior of the Imperium, clad in ceramite and faith, bound by oaths sworn beneath the light of Terra. You walked among demigods, fought for humanity's survival, and believed, truly believed, that you were the shield against the night. But that was before the betrayal. Before the Warmaster's call echoed across the void and split the galaxy in two. Before you watched your brothers turn on one another, bolter fire tearing through flesh that had stood shoulder to shoulder against Xeno's horrors and demon spawn alike. Before you felt the whisper of the dark gods coil around your thoughts like smoke, promising power, promising freedom, promising an end to the suffering. And you listened. You fell. And now, 10,000 years later, you exist in a state worse than death. Your armor no longer gleams with imperial gold and cobalt blue. It is corroded, fused to your flesh, bleeding rust and ichor. Your body is no longer your own. It belongs to the warp, to the gods who feast on your despair and rage. Time has no meaning here. You have lived centuries in the span of a heartbeat, and a single moment has stretched into lifetimes of torment. You are a Chaos Space Marine, and this is your existence, a doomed spiral into madness, mutation, and eternal war. But before we descend into the abyss together, do me one favor. If this journey into the darkness resonates with you, if you want to see more deep dives into the nightmares of the 41st millennium, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to understand the true cost of chaos. And subscribe, because we're only just beginning to peel back the layers of horror that await us in the grim darkness of the far future. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. The first thing you notice when you wake is the smell. It's always the smell. Wet rust and spoiled meat, thick enough to coat the back of your throat even through the filters of your helm. You don't remember falling asleep. Sleep is a luxury reserved for mortals, for those whose bodies still obey the rhythms of day and night. But you lost consciousness at some point, your mind collapsing under the weight of the voices that never stop whispering, and now you're awake again, standing in the ruins of a city whose name you've already forgotten. The sky above is a bruised purple, streaked with veins of sickly green light that pulse like a heartbeat. This world is dying. You helped kill it. The walls around you are scorched black, the stone melted into glass in places where the promethium burned hot enough to fuse atoms. Bodies lie scattered across the plaza, human bodies, small and fragile, their limbs twisted at angles that suggest they died screaming. You don't remember their faces. You don't remember if you killed them yourself or if it was one of your brothers. It doesn't matter. They're dead. You're not. That's the only distinction that counts anymore. Your armor groans as you shift your weight, the sound wet and organic, like bones grinding against cartilage. It used to fit you perfectly, a second skin crafted by the finest tech priests of Mars, calibrated to respond to the slightest twitch of muscle or thought. Now it's something else. The ceramite has fused with your flesh over centuries of exposure to the warp, the plates burrowing into your ribs, your shoulders, the curve of your spine. You can't remove it. You tried once long ago, and the pain was so absolute that you blacked out before you'd even pried loose a single pauldron. When you woke, the armor had sealed itself back over the wound, and you understood, it's not just part of you. It is you. Your skin has grown into the interior lining, nerve endings threading through the circuitry like roots through stone. When the armor is damaged, you bleed. When it corrodes, you feel the acid eating into your organs. And it is always corroding. You flex your left hand, watching the gauntlet creak and shudder. The fingers are too long now, the joints too many. You're not sure when that happened. Time doesn't work the same way here in the Eye of Terror. Days stretch into years, and years collapse into minutes. You've lived for 10,000 years since the siege of Terra, but your body remembers only fragments, 1,000 battles blurred together into a single endless war, punctuated by moments of clarity so sharp they cut. You remember the taste of your first kill after the fall, the way the blood tasted sweet on your tongue even through your helm's respirator. You remember the sound of a child's laughter in the ruins of a chapel, high and bright, before it was silenced by bolter fire. You remember the weight of your Primarch's gaze the last time you saw him, before he ascended into something too terrible to look at directly. But you don't remember your name. Not your real name, the one your mother gave you when you were still human. That was stolen from you, piece by piece, every time you spoke a prayer to the dark gods. Now you have only a title, a designation shouted across vox channels and carved into the armor of enemies you've killed. And even that feels temporary, like something that could be erased at any moment. The voices start again. They always start when you're alone with your thoughts, slithering in through the gaps in your consciousness like worms through a corpse. Some of them are familiar, the voices of brothers you killed, or who killed themselves, or who simply stopped existing when the warp swallowed them whole. Others are alien, inhuman, speaking in languages that were never meant for mortal tongues. They promise you things: power, apotheosis, an end to the pain. But you've learned not to trust them. The gods don't grant wishes. They collect debts. And every time you listen, every time you bend your will to theirs, the price gets steeper. You've seen what happens to those who give in completely. They become chaos spawn, writhing masses of flesh and bone and teeth, devoid of mind or purpose, existing only to suffer. Or worse, they ascend. They become demon princes, wrapped in the power of the warp, elevated to a state of immortal agony where they are nothing but extensions of their patron's will. You don't want either fate, but you're not sure you have a choice. Your Vox grill crackles to life, static hissing through the speakers embedded in your gorget. A voice cuts through the noise, distorted and sharp. Warsmith wants you at the muster point. Now. You don't recognize the voice, but that's not unusual. Your warband loses warriors constantly, some to enemy fire, some to mutation, some to betrayal. New recruits are folded in from other warbands, or dragged screaming from the Imperium during raids, their minds shattered and rebuilt in the image of chaos. They don't last long. Neither will you, probably. But until then, you obey. Not out of loyalty. Loyalty is a concept that died with the Imperium, but out of necessity. The warband is the only thing standing between you and annihilation. Alone, you are prey. Together, you are predators. That's the calculus of survival in the Eye of Terror. You move through the ruins, your boots crunching over debris and bone. The city is silent now, emptied of life, but you can still feel the echoes of what happened here. The screams have soaked into the stone, the terror imprinted on the air itself. This is what victory looks like for a Chaos Space Marine. Not triumph. Not glory. Just emptiness. The muster point is a collapsed cathedral, its walls torn open like a gutted animal, exposing the interior to the alien sky. Your brothers are already there, a dozen hulking figures clad in armor that ranges from midnight black to putrid green to bone white streaked with arterial red. No two are alike. Each set of plate tells a story of mutation and modification, of bargains struck with the dark gods and prices paid in flesh. Some have extra limbs sprouting from their backs, chitinous and insectoid. Others have faces fused into their chest plates, mouths opening and closing in silent prayer. One warrior has replaced his helm entirely with a cage of bone, inside which something wet and pulsating beats like a second heart. You take your place among them without speaking. Words are unnecessary. You all know why you're here. The warsmith stands at the center of the group, a towering figure in Terminator plate that has been so heavily modified it barely resembles its original form. His armor is a patchwork of scavenged parts, Imperial, Xenos, and demonic, welded together into a grotesque whole. His face is hidden behind a helm shaped like a skull, and his eyes glow with a cold, unnatural light. When he speaks, his voice is a low rumble that vibrates through your bones. "The despoiler calls," he says. "A new crusade. A new war. We march within the hour. There is no cheer, no battle cry. Only silence. Because you all know what this means. Another grinding campaign against the Imperium, another century of blood and fire, another step deeper into damnation. But there is no refusal. There is no retreat. There is only the war, eternal and unending, stretching out before you like a road paved with corpses. You are a Chaos Space Marine. And this is all you have left." The warband moves like a predator, low and fluid, through the skeletal remains of what was once a forge world. The sky here is perpetually dark, choked with ash and the smoke of burning promethium, and the ground beneath your boots is slick with oil and blood. This place was claimed months ago, or was it years? During a raid that left the Mechanicus defenders crucified on their own assembly lines, their augmetics torn out and repurposed by your warband's warpsmith. Now it serves as a staging ground, a festering wound in the materium where the veil between reality and the warp is thin enough to slip through. You can feel it in the air, that electric tension that precedes a storm. The immaterium is close here, pressing against the fabric of space like a hand against glass. If you listen carefully, you can hear it breathing. Your warband numbers perhaps 200 warriors, though the exact count shifts constantly. Some die. Some vanish into the warp and never return. Others appear out of nowhere, claiming to have been part of the warband for decades, their memories rewritten by the gods until even they believe the lie. There is no formal structure, no chain of command in the way the Imperium would recognize. Instead, power is determined by strength, cunning, and the favor of the dark gods. The warsmith leads because he is the strongest, because he has killed every challenger who has tried to take his place, and because the warband needs his expertise to maintain the corrupted war machines that make up your fleet. But his leadership is not absolute. There are factions within the warband, alliances that form and dissolve like smoke, warriors who bow to different gods and pursue different goals. You trust none of them. They trust none of you. And yet, somehow, you function. Because the alternative is death. You walk beside a warrior named Karvik, or at least that's what he calls himself now. His armor is the color of dried blood, and his helm is adorned with the skulls of space marines he's killed. Loyalists, mostly, but a few traitors as well. He's been with the warband longer than most, long enough to have earned a reputation as a survivor, which in this existence is the highest form of praise. He doesn't speak unless he has something worth saying, and you've learned to value that silence. Most of your brothers are consumed by the voices in their heads, driven to rambling monologues or screaming fits by the constant pressure of the warp. Karvik is different. He's learned to compartmentalize, to wall off the parts of his mind that have been colonized by chaos and preserve a small core of sanity. It won't last. It never does. But for now, he's useful. The warsmith grows restless, Karvik says, his voice a low growl filtered through the vox grill of his helm. He hasn't heard from the despoiler in weeks. The summons should have come by now. You glance at him, noting the tension in his posture. Karvik is worried. That's unusual. Worry implies you have something to lose, and most Chaos Space Marines shed that vulnerability long ago. Maybe Abaddon's dead, you say, though you don't believe it. The Warmaster has died before. At least, there are stories that claim he has, but he always comes back, dragged from the warp by the will of the gods or his own refusal to stay down. Karvik snorts, a sound like grinding metal. If he's dead, we're all dead. Without the despoiler, the warbands will turn on each other. This crusade is the only thing holding us together. He's right, of course. The Black Crusades are more than just military campaigns. They're the glue that binds the fractured legions of chaos into something resembling a unified force. Without them, the Eye of Terror would tear itself apart in a frenzy of infighting and bloodshed. And maybe that's what the Dark Gods want. Maybe they feed on the chaos as much as the carnage. The muster continues. More warriors arrive, dragging themselves out of the corrupted ruins of the Forge World's manufactorum districts. Some are fresh from battle, their armor still smoking, their weapons slick with gore. Others look like they've been sleeping for centuries, their plate encrusted with layers of grime and corrosion so thick it's a miracle they can still move. You recognize a few faces, if they can still be called faces. There's Vorkash, a berserker of Khorne whose helm has fused into his skull, the eye lenses replaced by bleeding sockets that weep tears of molten brass. There's Serlix, a sorcerer of Tzeentch whose body is more warp stuff than flesh, his form flickering in and out of reality like a guttering candle. And there's the Pale Choir, a cluster of noise marines bound together by cables and neural links, their individual identities subsumed into a gestalt consciousness that communicates only through bursts of sonic distortion. Each of them is a monster. Each of them is damned. And each of them is your brother, in the only sense that word still has meaning. The warsmith addresses the assembled warband, his voice booming across the ruined plaza. "We have been summoned," he announces. "The despoiler has opened a new front. The Cadian Gate is breached. The cicatrix male dictum splits the galaxy in two. This is the hour we have waited for. This is the moment when the Imperium falls and the long war is won." There is a murmur among the warriors, a ripple of anticipation and hunger. You feel it too, that surge of adrenaline that precedes battle, the primal need to kill and destroy. But beneath it, there's something else. Fear. Because you know what this means. The Cadian Gate was the linchpin of the Imperium's defense against chaos, the fortress world that held the line for 10,000 years. If it's truly fallen, if the Great Rift now scars the galaxy, then the war is about to escalate beyond anything you've seen before. And escalation, in the Eye of Terror, means suffering on a scale you can't even imagine. The warsmith continues. "We depart within the hour. Prepare yourselves. Check your war gear. Make your prayers. And remember, there is no failure, only death. Disappoint me, and I will feed you to the warp myself." He turns and strides away, his Terminator plate hissing and growling with each step. The warband disperses, each warrior retreating to their own corner of the ruins to prepare. You find yourself alone again, standing in the shadow of a collapsed hab block, staring up at the roiling sky. The voices are louder now, excited by the promise of bloodshed. They chant the names of the Dark Gods, a cacophony of worship and madness that drowns out your own thoughts. You try to remember why you fell. What promise did the gods make that seemed worth abandoning everything you once believed in? Was it power? Revenge? Freedom from the tyranny of the Emperor and his Imperium? You can't remember. The reasons have been eroded by time and torment, leaving only the hollow shell of a choice you can no longer undo. Karvik appears beside you, silent as a ghost. "You're thinking too much," he says. "That's dangerous." You don't answer. He's right, of course. Thinking leads to doubt, and doubt leads to weakness. The only way to survive in the Eye of Terror is to embrace the madness, to let the voices guide you, to become the monster you were always meant to be. But some part of you, the part that still remembers your name, even if you can't speak it, resists. That part knows that once you give in completely, Once you surrender the last fragments of your humanity, there will be nothing left worth saving. And yet, every day, that part grows smaller. Every battle, every kill, every prayer to the dark gods shaves away another sliver of your soul. Soon, there will be nothing left but the hunger. The warp transit is agony. It always is. The ship, a corrupted strike cruiser known as the Abyssal Maw, lurches into the Imperium with a scream that you feel in your bones, a sound that bypasses your ears entirely and resonates directly in your skull. The Geller field flickers, its integrity compromised by centuries of neglect and the deliberate sabotage of the ship's warpsmith, who believes that a weakened barrier allows the gods to speak more clearly. He's not wrong. The moment the ship enters the warp, reality begins to fracture. The walls of the transit chamber ripple and bulge, and faces press against the metal from the inside, their mouths open in silent screams. Demons flicker in and out of existence, translucent and hungry, their eyes fixed on you with an intensity that makes your skin crawl. You've made this journey 1,000 times, but it never gets easier. The warp hates you. It loves you. It wants to consume you and remake you in its image. And one day it will succeed. You're strapped into a restraint harness, mag-locked to the floor of the chamber, along with a dozen other warriors. The journey to the Cadian Gate will take days, or weeks, or minutes. Time has no meaning in the warp, and you've learned to stop trying to measure it. All you can do is endure. Around you, your brothers react in different ways. Some pray, their voices raised in devotion to their chosen gods, reciting liturgies that curdle the air and make the demons dance. Others rage, straining against their restraints, howling obscenities at the entities that press against the Geller field. A few have slipped into catatonia, their minds retreating inward to escape the sensory assault. You do none of these things. Instead, you focus on a single thought, a mantra you repeat over and over until it becomes a shield against the madness. I am not my armor. I am not my weapon. I am not the voice in my head. It's a lie, of course. You are all of those things and more. But the lie helps. For now. The gods are always watching. You can feel their presence like a weight on your soul, a gravitational pull that drags you toward oblivion. Khorne, the blood god, roars in your ears, demanding slaughter and skulls. Nurgle, the plague father, whispers promises of peace through decay, offering to end your suffering by transforming you into something beyond pain. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, fills your mind with visions of possible futures, each one branching into infinite variations, until you can't tell which path is real and which is illusion. And Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, offers ecstasy and oblivion, a pleasure so intense it will burn away everything you are. They all want you. They all claim you. And yet, none of them own you completely. Not yet. Because you have not chosen. You have not sworn yourself body and soul to a single patron. You remain undivided, a warrior of chaos undivided, serving all four and none. It's a dangerous path. Those who walk it risk being torn apart by the conflicting demands of the gods, their bodies and minds shredded by competing mutations and madness. But it's also the only path that offers a shred of autonomy. The only way to avoid becoming a puppet. Across the chamber, you see Vorkash, the berserker of Khorne. He's screaming, his voice raw and broken, and you realize he's been screaming since the ship entered the warp. His restraints are beginning to buckle under the strain of his thrashing, and you can see blood seeping from the joints of his armor where his body has begun to tear itself apart in its frenzy. Khorne is feeding on his rage, amplifying it, pushing him toward a state of transcendence where he will either ascend or explode. You've seen it happen before. Warriors who give too much to the blood god become living weapons, their minds burned away until nothing remains but the instinct to kill. Vorkash is almost there. Another few hours, and he'll either be dead or transformed into something unrecognizable. Serlix, the sorcerer, is different. He sits in perfect stillness, his eyes, what's left of them, glowing with a pale, otherworldly light. His lips move constantly, mouthing words in a language that shifts and changes with each syllable, and the air around him shimmers with uncast spells. Tzeentch has claimed him more completely than any of the other gods have claimed their servants, and you can see the evidence in his body. His left arm has become a mass of feathers and eyes, each one blinking independently, and his torso is split down the middle, revealing a swirling vortex of color and light where his organs should be. He's still useful, barely, his sorceress abilities making him invaluable in battle. But you know he's on borrowed time. Tzeentch does not reward loyalty with stability. The architect of fate delights in change, and Serlix will continue to mutate until he collapses into a chaos spawn or is elevated into a demon prince. Either way, he's already lost. The ship shudders, and the lights flicker. For a moment, the Geller field fails completely, and the demons flood in. They're everywhere, crawling across the walls, the ceiling, your armor. You feel claws raking across your helm, teeth gnashing against the ceramite, and you roar, thrashing against your restraints. The warrior next to you, a plague marine whose name you never learned, is torn apart in seconds, his body ripped open by invisible hands, his innards spilling across the deck in a steaming heap. The smell is overwhelming, a mixture of rot and sulfur that makes your eyes water even through your helm's filters. And then, just as suddenly, the Geller field snaps back into place, and the demons are gone. The plague marine's corpse remains, twitching and bubbling as Nurgle's gifts take root, and you realize he's not dead. Not really. His body will reform, animated by the plague god's will, and he'll rise again, more resilient and more disgusting than before. That's the gift of Nurgle. Immortality through corruption. You close your eyes and try to find that mantra again, but it's slipping away, eroded by the constant assault of the warp. I am not my armor. But you are. Your flesh and the ceramite are one, inseparable. I am not my weapon. But you are. You've killed so many times, for so many reasons, that violence has become your only language. I am not the voice in my head. But you are. The voices have been there so long, whispering and shouting and pleading, that you can't remember what your own thoughts sound like anymore. You're losing yourself. Bit by bit, piece by piece, the gods are carving away everything you were and replacing it with something else. And the worst part? You're not sure you care. Because the alternative, holding on to your humanity, clinging to the memory of who you were, is so much more painful. The transit ends with a jolt that slams you against your restraints hard enough to crack a rib. The ship drops out of the warp and back into real space, and the sudden silence is deafening. You suck in a breath, tasting recycled air and the faint tang of blood, and force yourself to focus. The restraints disengage with a hiss of hydraulics, and you stagger to your feet, your legs unsteady beneath you. Around you, the survivors are doing the same, each one moving like a puppet with tangled strings. Vorkash is still screaming, though quieter now, a low, continuous moan that suggests something inside him has broken. Serlix is laughing, a high, brittle sound that sets your teeth on edge. The plague marine is reforming, his body knitting itself back together with wet, sucking noises. You turn away and make your way toward the embarkation deck. The Cadian gate lies ahead. Or what's left of it. Through the viewport, you can see the shattered remains of Cadia, its surface cracked and burning, chunks of the planet drifting in the void like the corpse of a slain god. The great rift tears across the sky, a bleeding wound in reality that spills madness and demons into the Imperium. This is what victory looks like. This is what 10,000 years of war has bought. Not glory. Not triumph. Just ruin. You grip your bolter, feeling its weight settle into your hands like an old friend, and prepare to descend once more into the fire. Because that's what you are now. Not a hero. Not a warrior. Just a tool of the dark gods, wielded and discarded as they see fit. And there is no escape. There is no redemption. There is only the long war, stretching out into eternity, consuming everything in its path. You are a Chaos Space Marine. And this is your doom.